Welcome to Focus on the Candidates. I'm Cynthia Pooler. My guest today is my friend Charlotte Dennett, who lives in Vermont, and she's has a long history of studying um, the situation with oil, and she's going to talk to us about this new war in Iran and its connection to oil. So, Charlotte, where do you begin?
You know, you begin in the late 1990s when the neocons were figuring out how they were going to get control over the oil of the Middle East. Um, and so you could say September 11th sure gave them an opportunity in that it launched the war on terror. It launched Islamophobia. And by the way, I should add, I just heard on the radio, on the television today, that people are feeling like what's going on now with all these vicious attacks on Islam. They were reminded of 2003, with the invasion of Iraq. They've always wanted the oil of Iran, and they've never been able to get it. And the thing is that when you hear Trump saying, we don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon, and then he says they obliterate all these lies. Okay. And I was looking for just the slightest hint that what he was really interested in was controlling Iran's oil. And I found it. There was he was at a press conference. This was about, when was this? A few months ago. I'm
Okay.
looking at a piece I wrote about it. I entitled "It's Always Been the Oil, Stupid." And a reporter asked the question that is verboten to this day in the halls of Congress and with the media.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Trump blew open the whole his whole aspiration to get oil in Venezuela. That was obvious. But he didn't say so much about getting the oil of Iran, except this one time a reporter asked him, and the reporter asked, "Do you want to control Iran's oil?" And his answer is, "That's an option, but I wouldn't talk about it." And for the next couple of days, he didn't. He hid the oil connection. And then he spilled it out, telling Financial Times he could take the oil of Iran. So just just think about that. I mean, Iran's got, I think it's the third largest country, the third largest reserves of oil in the world. And I remember Cheney sort of saying, Dick Cheney, saying, God, I wish we could get that oil, but we can't. So that's what he's been trying to do. Instead, because he's just a transactional president, he thought he could win it. He could win it slam dunk like Venezuela. The whole problem is the man is historically ignorant. And
Mm.
many people warned him that this would be a folly, that he could never get Iran unless he committed troops on the ground. And well, we've seen what happened. Iran pulled its card. it's it's equivalent to a nuclear weapon in its geography. It's controlling the Straits of Hormuz. It's put him in an awful predicament. He uh, he desperately wants to end that because he's realizing that that the whole world economy could be in crisis if he doesn't get this solved quickly. So you heard there's one explanation that Iran and Oman have worked out a deal. And then we find out, and he thinks there's a deal already all set, and then Iran starts laying on
Well,
requirements. What?
let me ask you this question. Maybe Trump is not a deep thinker, but there's other people around him that have the capacity or the ability. to think maybe better than Trump. They knew that this was the situation, but yet they let it happen.
Yeah, well, they knew that the Strait of Hormuz would be an issue. They knew that and they warned it, and I've talked about it. I mean, let me just go back a little bit and then explain. Then we'll come back to what did they know. The war in Yemen, you know, is people have sort of lost memory of that. It was horrible. And it was a decade ago, if I've got my numbers right. But anyway, the whole point is that Saudi Arabia realized that if the Straits of Hormuz were blocked, they had to find another way to ship their oil. And so what did they do? They had the Trans-Yemen pipeline plan. It's in my book. By the way, my book, Follow the Pipelines, Uncovering a Mystery of a Lost Spy. That was my father, and the deadly politics of the great game for oil. It's in there. My book is full of pipeline maps, um, because oil has to move. And the best way to do it is pipelines, but you got to protect them. Anyway, that whole war in Yemen was Saudi Arabia trying to get a pipeline to go south to avoid the Strait of Hormuz, and it would come out off the shores of Yemen, and they'd be free of all their problems, right? So that pipeline still has not been completed. There was a lot of fighting over it. Now the Houthis have moved towards the Bab el Mandeb Strait, which is the other choke point. I mean, people need to get out a map. I'm sure they've seen enough of the Strait of Hormuz, that's true, but you got to look at the whole territory to understand what's really going on. So, coming back to your question, what did they know? The whole point is the way I'm looking at it, the it's new wealth ever since the neocons, well, they got Bush to invade Iraq, for instance. Um,
Well, he
Bush,
was money, right?
what?
His family was old money.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true. What happened is, I think there was a sort of mutual understanding that Bush, by the way, had never had the money that the Rockefellers had. Okay, he had control of a little oil company, in Mexico, I think. Trying to remember. Anyway, but he was not in the big league, even though his father was. He wasn't, in terms of oil. But at any rate, there seems to have been a coming together. But old wealth, such as Rockefeller, and my husband and I have written a book about how he dominated the whole Latin America during World War II. Um, they learned through trial and error for over a century of being the primary oil power in the world. And what they learned is that you do not go into a country with a sledgehammer, like what Trump did. What he did, bombing indiscriminately, killing little children that first day of bombing in the school, hundreds dead, eliminating the leaders, and then thinking you're going to be able to cut a deal. I mean, it's folly. It is sheer folly. I think that Orwell sort of went along with a lot of what he's doing because they're making money beautifully, even with the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. The price of oil goes up, they cash in, they get a lot of money. Okay. Now it's to a point where he looks weak. He's his allies are not comfortable with him anymore. They see that he's reckless, and so he's in a pickle. And I
Netanyahu.
Oh, well, yeah, yes. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah. Netanyahu screwed him. Oh my God. You see, Netanyahu saw him as the perfect means to get a long dreamed of hold over Iran. And that is sort of the greater Israel project, even extending as far as Iran. They've wanted it. The right wing have wanted to get Iran. And of course, they don't like the idea that Iran would have a nuclear weapon because Iranians are mortal enemies with Israel, as they are with the United States. The great Satan, and Israel is the little great Satan. So Netanyahu has convinced him to go into this thing. And I learned one thing that may be significant, and I just read it yesterday, and that was that the beneficiary of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz is guess who? Guess who would benefit from this? Well, anyway, I will tell you who it was. It's Israel. Why?
God.
Why Israel? Because Netanyahu has dreamed for the past 30 to 40 years of not only the Greater Israel Project, but also creating an energy corridor up the entire coast of the Eastern Mediterranean. And when oil and natural gas was discovered off the coast of Israel and Lebanon and Gaza and Syria, there's a just huge, there's at least $500 billion worth of oil and natural gas off the coast. So, so Israel wants to tap into that and ideally would create a pipeline corridor going up the whole Eastern Mediterranean. But there's a problem with that. You can't get any bank to finance it if there's conflict in the region. So that's why Israel has been wiping out Gaza. That's how he's getting rid of conflict. He's destroying buildings. He's committing genocide against the people. He's relocating them. And then he's got to do it in Lebanon. So this whole invasion of Lebanon that's happened since March is part of what's called the Gazification of Lebanon, the same thing. You got to get rid of conflict. That means destroy Hezbollah. And it's just been unrelenting bombing of southern Lebanon. And Lebanon is in a fix because it's had so much violence ever since the Civil War that began in 1975 and extended all the way to 1990. That was called a civil war, but what it was really, it was a war to get rid of the PLO, and it succeeded finally. Arafat was forced out of Lebanon. A lot of the refugees from the first Intifada um, brought over 150,000 Palestinians into Lebanon, and they were set up in refugee camps. And then by the 70s, they'd become radicalized. And I happened to be a reporter at that time. I was there from 72 to 75. And I saw all the anger over Israel. When I was there, a beloved Palestinian poet, Ghassan Ghanafani, was killed in his apartment because Israelis had gone in there and just shot him dead. And then I left just around the time that the Civil War broke out. And I frankly had been shot at. They missed, obviously. I was just going to visit a friend and there was an incident and I escaped. Or I could go into it, but I escaped. And and then I ended up thinking I would be safer if I was at home for a while. So I went back to the States, not realizing that the Civil War would last for 15 years. But the Lebanese people have suffered terribly. And now, I think people are not quite as interested in Lebanon. I mean, kind of for obvious reasons. Israel is the home of Jewish homeland, and so Jews around the world are all concerned about what's going on there, understandably. But Lebanon has borne the brunt of this conflict in many ways. Israel invaded several times, and the most recent invasion is to extend what they call the yellow line It's a buffer zone, and I have a map that will show. And if you Google this, you'll find out that the reason their troops keep forcing themselves further north into Lebanon is to get control of Lebanon's oil and natural gas. And if I
Mhm.
can go back um, in Gaza, and I document this, Netanyahu uh, sent troops into Gaza. Why? He did not want them to have control over their natural gas and oil off the coast, which is legally belongs to them according to international law. Israel did not want that, and the argument was, oh, any money they get from that would just go back to feeding terrorism. That was the argument. Whereas the Gazans, I remember Arafat at the time was jubilant. At last, the people of Gaza will have some economic security and possibly independence. That's how he looked at it. The Israelis did not want it. So in 2009, there was an invasion, killed about 1,000, if I remember. In 2014, there was another invasion for the same purpose. And it did, they caused a lot of damage. And I would say even while there's been discussions between the Lebanese and the Israelis, it looks like Israel is trying to get more of that oil and natural gas. Anyway, the whole plan is develop possibly pipeline routes that carry it up to Turkey and on to Europe. And of course, Europe, everything's interconnected. Europe, ever since you remember the Nord Stream 2
Uh,
pipeline was sabotaged, and
mhm.
it happened not long after the Russians invaded Ukraine. The whole thing is Russia was the main supplier of natural gas to Europe because it was cheaper. And it had another pipeline, Nord Stream 1, that was funneling natural gas and had for decades. And so Nord Stream 2 was going to give them more. And at that point, the powers that be, the United States under Biden, said, we are not going to allow the Russians to, well, he didn't say the Russians. He said, we're not going to let Nord Stream 2 go through. And indeed, Biden convinced Germany to put a hold on completion of that pipeline. Actually, it had been completed. It was just ready to go online in the summer. They put a hold on it. Then it was sabotaged. And so Europe was desperately looking for other ways to get gas. And that's when it started under Biden. He I think it was right before the fall of 2023 that they'd signed a memorandum saying that they wanted that Israel would help in getting oil and natural gas to
Mhm.
Europe. So as far as I know, that still has not happened, but there are big schemes afoot. One of them is called the IMEC, India Middle East Corridor. And this would be a pipeline that would run from India and go underwater and land in Saudi Arabia, and then traverse all the way up with a terminal point in Haifa, Palestine,
No,
which matched actually very much the route of the Trans-Arabian pipeline that my father was working on to secure it, to make sure that it would be safe. He wrote a memo. I'm going all over the place, but what I'm trying to say is it's all about oil. They all want the oil, and they're
okay.
desperate for it.
Okay. My question, and we've touched upon this a few times. The oil that you're talking about, it's basically used for military purposes.
Correct, which never gets discussed. This is the whole reason that you don't hear it. You don't hear it on the news. You don't hear it in Congress. I could talk about why you don't hear it in Congress if you'd like to hear.
Yes.
Um, yeah. Well, there's there's a woman who bravely is suing Big Oil right now for her mother died in a heat dome. So she's going after them for lying about the connection of climate change and fossil fuels. And I was very interested, and I read, I thought, well, what is their defense? Uh, and a lawyer for let's see, which is it? I'm blanking out. One of the Chevron. The lawyer for Chevron was stating, um, this would not be good. This will hurt us. This will hurt the economy. It will hurt the industry. And everyone in Congress knows that this is a national security issue. Bingo. They
Mhm.
know they're not supposed to talk about it. Okay. Why is it so sensitive? Because Germany lost both wars, World War One and World War Two, because it ran out of gas. Its
Mhm.
troops, its lorries, its air force, they ran out of gas. So this was a lesson to all the major powers that, well, aspired to be major powers. They knew they had to control it. And so I have the great game for oil. It's going on all the time. And a lot of it involves pipelines because that's how it gets distributed. Anyway, so if you want to come back to Iran, um, they lost that one. Trump went in with a sledgehammer. And but as I was saying, I just read the other day that Israel would be the main beneficiary of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Isn't that interesting? Suddenly, there's got to be intense interest in them developing these huge oil and natural gas fields as alternatives to sending Saudi oil, through the Strait of Hormuz. That's it. That's what's going on. So,
Wow.
yeah, I've been asked, well, do you know for sure that that's the case? All I'm saying is, I heard this, Israel will be the beneficiary, and then I put all my pieces together, and it kind of makes sense to me.
Mhm.
And, I mean, Netanyahu's a wily guy. I mean, Bush is in a way like a criminal, can be very wild
You mean Trump?
and very sharp. And they're both trying to stay out of prison. Oh, who did
Well,
I say? Oh, well,
you
whoever I
said
said,
Bush.
Trump, yeah. Oh, Bush, yeah. Bush on the mind. No, Trump, yeah. Netanyahu was a cheerleader behind the war in Iraq. Why? Because he wanted to reopen a pipeline that ran from Kirkuk, Iraq to Haifa. It had existed. The British controlled it after World War One, and that was going on up until 1948. And then, with the creation of the State of Israel, Iraq, which was highly nationalistic at the time, said, "No, we're not going to ship our oil to the State of Israel," and so it's been closed for all these years. He wanted it to reopen, and he even boasted, once the troops were sent in the war in Iraq, he said, soon the oil will be flowing to Haifa. It's not a pipe dream. And yet it was. It still hasn't been reopened.
Mhm.
But as I say, they've got other big schemes. I've got a visual here, and I wish your viewers could see it. It's an extraordinary map. And it would appear to be the Eastern Mediterranean and Gaza reconstructed. I'm going to put it up. Can you see
Yep.
that? What do you see in it? For instance, what's in the water, in the blue water? Can you
Mm.
tell? All right, I'll tell you. Okay, oil tankers.
Oh,
See, right up there, oil
okay.
tankers. And what is this? What is this? Well, it doesn't explain what it is. It could be railroad, but I'll bet you anything that's part of the pipeline scheme. And I was showing it to some other people, and they were looking at, where is it? They were looking at over here, right?
Mhm.
And they said, those look like data centers. Well, maybe they are. And as we know, these data centers are consuming huge amounts of natural gas to power them. So that's why Trump is drill baby drill, other than the fact that it's oil companies that are totally controlling the man. They are the major funders. So he does their bidding.
So you think this is going to last a while longer?
Well, he hasn't come up with a solution, and he sees the midterms coming up. He's going to have to eat crow. I mean, that's what people are thinking right now. He's going to have to cut a deal. The Iranians, you know, see, he didn't understand the level of anger that the Iranians have against the United States. For instance, overthrowing uh, Mossadegh in '53, their leader,
Sure.
because he nationalized the oil. Don't you know? You know that's a no-no. That's a
Right.
no-no. You don't national oil. So and then there was the hostage crisis, which I write about in my book. I interviewed families of some of the hostages and got a huge insight into that whole thing. Um, the Shah, the Shah was big friend of the Rockefellers and was putting all of his money into Chase Manhattan Bank. And when there was a lot of commotion going on in Iran in 1979, and the State Department warned Washington, don't let the ailing Shah, who had been deposed, don't let him into the United States. Um, because there's going to be a problem. There's going to be riots. Well, according to this family member who had sent a letter saying, watch out for Rockefeller, Kissinger, and Helms, um, you know, there was an oil connection. But the fact of the matter is, there's also a money connection. They let the Shah into the United States, and what happened? Iranians seized the embassy. So the warning was ignored. The Iranians seized the embassy. But what happened next? That gave the Carter administration, the pretext to start withdrawing money, Iran's money, oil money, from Chase banks to stop him from withdrawing the money. The Ayatollah was beginning to withdraw the money. The seizure of the embassy gave the U.S. the right to stop them from seizing money. I mean, the U.S. still owes money to Iran that they had seized. And I mean, the Iranians don't forget this, even though the mullahs took over, even though there's a lot of people who understandably hate the regime. But the U.S. totally blew it. Promised these people that it'd be over and take over the government. That was foolhardy. A lot of people died as a result. But now with all this intensive bombing, it's like backfiring. It's like now the Iranian people feel that this is an existential threat and they're coming together. So this whole thing is backfired. Now,
Wow.
how are these two desperate leaders who want to stay out of jail? What are they going to do? It's hard to say. What my read of following all the discussions is he's going to have to relent. But Iran's come forward with all these requirements that make it hard. Jerry, oh God. Anyway, he always walks by when I'm on.
That's fine.
Anyway, yeah. So let's see what he's got to give in, and he's got to save face. How is he going to save face on this thing? He'll save face by saying, I got it reopened. Of course, it was reopened before. And what else? I don't think he's going to get the nuclear deal. Don't think so.
Mm.
It's
So,
a calamity. This is clearly the beginning of the end of America as a superpower. It's in decline now. Everybody can see it. So all sorts of alliances are being made without the United States. I mean, he's lost people's trust.
mm.
It's but it's not a happy moment. It's a scary moment. What
So,
is he? Yeah, what's he going to do with the elections? I
right.
have a prediction. My prediction is that some kind of riot or something is going to happen. Then he's going to call in troops and he's going to declare martial law. He is not going to allow this election to go through. That's my prediction. And there are other people predicting it.
That happens, there will be such outrage in this country, I would think, right?
Yeah, I would think. Well, you can see everything they're doing step by step, and the courts are saying, no, you can't do it, no, you can't do it, but they're still trying. I think that's the ultimate. So we'll
Wow.
see. And
Okay.
by the way, here's another point. You know, I was just looking at Jerry's work on the DuPont book and how it was suppressed, and he got an award in DC. Um, you know that Wilmington, Delaware was under occupation. This was after I think after the murder of Martin Luther King. There were riots. DuPont sent in the troops. It was the longest military occupation of a city in history. The DuPonts are very right wing. I wouldn't be surprised if they're very much behind Trump. We haven't looked at it yet, but it wouldn't surprise me. And they've got a record. They also wanted to send troops into, I think it was Michigan, uh, where there were efforts by the UAW to organize a plant there. And the DuPonts wanted to send in troops, and FDR said no. So it didn't
Mm,
happen. They
okay, so
also wanted an armed march on Washington. Smedley Butler blew the whistle on that one. So it's not out of the range of possibility that that's going to be the final decision.
you predict a halt to the midterms, right?
Yeah, I predict yes.
Okay.
Because
Netanyahu,
it's not going well for them, as
so
you know.
Netanyahu is also up for election.
That's right.
What's going to happen to him?
Who knows? That's
So
the reason why he reneged on Trump's recent effort to get some kind of peace deal is because he's got to shore up his right-wing base to make sure, and they want Iran. That's what they want. And so he's stalling until his election. And I can't say. There's a lot of anger against him, and there's a lot of anger about October the 2023 raid by Hamas that was not caught by him in time. A lot of anger, and they've never done a full investigation of that. So I don't know how strong the right wing is in Israel, but it's pretty strong. So Netanyahu is now looking after himself, period. And I would guess Trump is furious, but what can he do?
Mhm.
You know?
So do you think if he's voted out of office, he'll wind up in jail?
That's right.
Okay.
And he doesn't want that.
You think
And
that
it
it
but and
you th-
if the Democrats win the House and the Senate, that's where Trump's going to end up, and he knows it.
okay, now what I've heard is that if there were 5 seats in the House
Hmm.
won by independents, the balance of power in Congress would change, and neither the Democrats or Republicans will hold a majority. So the majority will be the independents in the House of Representatives.
Well, I don't see how they could be the majority. I mean, how many are you talking about?
Five.
Well, I mean, if you're saying they won 5 seats so that overall
They
I
would hold the
they would
balance.
ally, I would think they would vote with the Democrats. Am I wrong?
I think you might be.
So they would vote for the fascist Republican Party?
They wouldn't do that either.
Well, then what happens?
They would have
Stalemate?
they
What?
would have their own caucus.
Okay, they have their own caucus, but when it comes to passing bills and things like that, then they can ally. They can ally with either party. And I would think that most of them would want to ally with the Democrats. It's not like the Democrats are their friends. I get that. But the reality of politics is when it comes to big votes, you got to count your votes, and what's going to happen.
Well, we'll know, after the midterms
Yeah,
what is going to happen. S-
right.
So I think um since there's September, October, 3.5 months, no, almost 3 months until election day.
Yeah.
Let's talk again after election day. Let's sort it out. Let's see, what the news tells us about Netanyahu, what the news tells us about Trump, what the news tells us about the midterms, and we'll do another show.
Yeah, yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay. So,
let's see what happens.
right. So, you've been listening to Charlotte Dennett, and
Author of Follow the Pipelines. People,
yeah,
it's on sale now at Amazon. I just noted. I don't know why. I
and
really encourage you to get this book because you'll understand the Middle East a lot better. All the maps, it all makes sense. Anyway,
Uh, I'm Cynthia Pooler. This is Focus on the Candidates. Charlotte ran for Attorney General in the state of Vermont, right?
yeah, a
And
quixotic run.
so if you like this show, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. But more important, if you're listening or watching this, please share on your social media because the more this is shared, the more Charlotte's voice will be amplified. Thanks, Charlotte. We'll talk again. We'll have another lively conversation.
Oh,
Um,
that's great, Cynthia.
and
Cynthia. Yeah,
and well, I'll see you in November.
yeah.
And thank you, everybody, for listening. Have a great day.
Kat says goodbye too. Bye, Cynthia.